My name is Burke, and I am an alcoholic. That was a very sweet way to say I live in way the heck out there. Yeah, I live in Wiley, Texas, which is a great little community, and also has a great recovery out there. But I got sober here in 2012, and Dallas, especially Dallas gay recovery. Not that this is a gay meeting, but you guys kind of know what I mean. Dallas, mostly LGBT friendly recovery feels like home to me. So I'm happy to be home and happy to be here with y'all, and really honored to have been asked to share my story. So, Burke, alcoholic, sober since April the 6th of this year. So I just celebrated 6 months, and as I alluded to before, this is not my first rodeo. This is I don't know if we're counting rodeos, but this is not my first rodeo. I'm really grateful to be not just sober, but like I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be free. Like by free, I mean like not locked up. I'm grateful to like still have rights, like full custody of my kids. I've still got a job. Like I didn't lose all of the things that would have been very easy for me to lose, drinking and using in such a destructive way, the only way that I know how. So I'm really grateful. So what happened, or let's start at maybe what it was like and then what happened, and what it's like now. So I I was born and raised not far from here, probably 90 miles northeast, in Paris, Texas, or this is a bad dad joke, but as I, often say, I grew up in the suburbs of Paris, Texas, in a little town called Cunningham, which had 90 people in it. I think there were 91, while I'm just being truthful, like 91, it popped 91. And, it was probably 25 miles outside of Paris. And Paris is not a big city itself. I mean, there's a Walmart there. At the time I was growing up, there was like a Winn-Dixie. There was not a lot to do down there. When I went to high school, we got fancy restaurants like Chili's and Applebee's like the same year. So they were really coming up. And I grew up in a really rural environment. 2-parent household. They're still together. My dad is more John Wayne than John Wayne. So he is the archetype of what most people that aren't from Texas think about when they think about Texas. That's my dad. And then my mom is, my dad was a blue collar worker and then also raised and still raises cattle. And my mom is a retired school administrator. She was a principal for a lot of years. She was principal while I was in school, which is, those stories are upcoming, But she and my mom grew up dirt poor. So my mom grew up dirt poor in Cunningham, Texas, where she didn't have running water until she was in her 20s. She got married whenever she was 16, and she jokingly, but kind of wink, half jokingly, always tells the story. She's like, I married Henry because he gave me a dime a day for a Coca-Cola. And I don't think that was a joke. She was probably serious. I have a really, like most of us good alcoholics do, I have a really interesting relationship with my parents. I'll also layer this in while I'm just giving background. Very religious household. So I grew up, I went to church at Life Tabernacle Church of Pentecost, where there was a lot of throwing up of hands. It was very evangelical, and I'm not knocking that. I'm just telling the story. But my story is very similar to, if you guys have heard Starkey, which is just one of my very favorite speakers. She's so funny. It's such a good example of AA. When she tells her stories, she talks about her experience with the Pentecostal church teaching her two things: that God loved me and I'm going to hell. And that's that is not unlike my experience with that church. So again, that's sort of an outside issue. I'm just giving my experience. And there will be a few of those sort of topics that I dance around that are just my experience. And if any of what I talk about is something you can't reconcile with your own experience or the big book of AA, just take it or leave it, or talk about me after it's done, or whatever you need to do. So that's the background. Neither of them drank. Neither of my folks drank. I have an older brother and an older sister, and they were a lot older because they were from my mom's first marriage. So 19 years older and 14 years older, and they didn't drink while I was growing up. Now, I buried my brother in 2019 behind this disease. So he was early 50s and, just kind of dropped dead from chronic substance use disorder. And that's, anyway, so I come by this stuff honest, and I've got every one of my uncles on my mom's side was a wife-beaten drunk, a no-good, lazy drunk. So at least I went to work and didn't have a wife to beat. But yeah, that's I come by this honest, and then on my dad's side, there's not a lot of not a lot of this disease that's prevalent, but that's sort of the background. My earliest memories, kind of talking again about laying the foundation for when I'm going to start drinking. I remember at being 5 and waking up in church, and everybody is falling out. Everybody's like, doing the thing that they do at evangelical churches where they're speaking in tongues and they're raising their hands, and people are like, preachers like knocking people down with their heads. And 5-year-old me woke up and saw that and thought, no way. Like, skepticism was one of the earliest feelings about adults that I remember feeling. Soon thereafter, I remember hearing about, and these were stories that sort of haunted me as a little kid. I was a very self-aware kid. I also remember about that same age of 5, like being at JCPenney and like wishing that the also 5-year-old Arizona like jacket jean model was my boyfriend. Like, so I knew what was up, whenever I was young. And I also knew that was probably not good to share with the good folks at the Pentecostal Tabernacle. So like that was how I was experiencing the world at a pretty early age. And around 13, I guess, is when I took my first drink. And a lot of people will say things like, their first drink is really magical. That's not really my experience. A lot of people will say stuff like, I never wanted to grow up and be an alcoholic. That's kind of, that's, nobody really does, but like I did want to party. Like before I ever took a drink of alcohol, like I remember 1997 or 98 is like when I was 12 and 13, and like there were some really good movies that year, and they involved people getting real jacked up. Like I watched Boogie Nights when I was 12 and was like, I want to do all of that. I don't even know what that means, but that looks fun, so I was ready to rock and roll pretty early, and drank a Jack Daniel's Down Home Punch, and it was kind of a non-event. Then went to high school about a year later. Maybe I drank once or twice between then, but like I was in high school. I was pretty good about making friends. Like childhood was not sad. Like I'm telling the story about like, this, very religious sort of, it was fine. Like you get in where you fit in, you figure out how to like just live. And like, I had a good life. But I've got all these friends. I'm, sort of very much trying to manage image because I'm a little gay kid. That's like, we were at a sleepover at my buddy Buckethead's house, because again, this is Paris, Texas. We were at Buckethead's house, and we were in the hot tub, and which this is all sounding very cool for young gay me, and it's after like 2-a-days football practice before, like this is before high school really started, but we're doing football practice, and like I hated football, I hated all of that, but I'm doing it. They start passing around there was a doobie involved, but like they really started passing around this big like 2-liter of Purple Passion first. I don't know if you've ever had Purple Passion, but it's not awful. It's a little white trashy, but it's not awful. But where they were passing around this 2-liter and then also a joint, and like I had never felt so good in my life. Like that little like that was the it moment for me, and I just, that was the beginning of my love story with Mary Jane right there. Like, I loved that feeling. And yeah, so freshman year, I spent all of my lunch money on weed. And I just did. That sounded like, why not? I made best friends with, and I'm still really close with. I was in his wedding. He's a very dear friend of mine, but like, and he was the first guy that I came out to. Like, my best friend from high school, he lived with his sister, and she owned the biggest bar in town. So like, there was ready access to alcohol. I hung out with him. We smoked cigarettes because we were cool, like Camel non-filters, yuck. But like that's what we did, and I bought weed every day with my lunch money, and like smoked out of a Coca-Cola can, little bong thing, not bong, but like little pipe thing, which is that's so bad for you, by the way. Like if I caught my kids doing that, I'd be pissed. But like like all the little aluminum you're smoking, that's awesome. But like so freshman year was that. Freshman year I was playing football, basketball, and very involved. I was doing UIL stuff. But like even just with weed and drinking, I started to experience consequences. I started failing classes. I was doing one act play, and like I always like to tell this because I still have a really big ego, but like I got kicked off the play because of my grades, and then my understudy got all state. So it was it was like that. I know you all are very impressed because that's an impressive story. But like, that was essentially the height of my high school experience. The next year, I'd quit all sports because I was like, I've got other things going on, like smoking hella weed as soon as school is over. I got 4 or 5, or I don't know a handful of minor in possessions that freshman year, and then probably that many or maybe more my sophomore year. And then the summer between my sophomore and junior year, I was drunk, real drunk, and had for the umpteenth time stolen my parents' car. I come back to my parents' house driving stolen said car and roll up, and they are laying into me. My dad's in his tighty whities, my mom's in her house coat, and she's like, I mean, they're just, and you did this again, and whatever. And I'm drunk, and I said, you know what else? I'm gay. And Dad tilted in his tighty whities in like the arch of like the doorway, and my mom. Oh yeah, I'll tell this part. My mom just yelled out. She goes, "Have you been out fucking boys?" I told her I don't fuck boys, I fuck men. And again, I was really drunk, so I wake up the next morning and I'm like, "Holy shit! Did that happen, or was that like the worst nightmare ever?" But like it happened. And so, so this was 2001 in, the suburbs of Paris, Texas, in rural East Texas. And I, this thing that I'd been trying very hard to manage my image around and not identify as for a long time is now staring me in the face with the 2 people that I really was trying to hide it from. And like, again, I'm already drinking in a destructive way, smoking pot in a, whatever, pot's pot. But like I somehow managed to smoke pot in a destructive way is the kind of drug addict and alcoholic that I am. So it just really got put into overdrive. And I don't know if that's because I really wanted to be hard. Like I didn't want anybody to think I'm like some soft gay guy, this thing that I've been running from my entire life. Or like maybe it just felt good to escape those actual feelings of fear of being kicked off the island or whatever. And, I've done a lot of therapy since then. So I use terms like kicked off the island. But like it really ramped up. And so within that year, that's when my life being over started to feel like a real thing, and that was a repetitive theme until I got sober when I was 27. That next decade of life was nothing but endings for me. I got kicked out of high school in 2001. I immediately joined or tried to join the Air Force. I took a test, got scored highly enough on it to do well and get scholarship and all this stuff. Right before I'm supposed to go off for like physical training or whatever, boot camp stuff, I get arrested with a felony amount of pot in Madisonville, Texas. And so you can't do any kind of security clearance whenever you have a felony, even when you're 16. So I got that dropped. I enrolled in junior college, which like for me, I mean, I come from white trash America, but I thought very highly of myself. Like I thought I was supposed to be at Stanford studying with, Mark Zuckerbergs of the world or whatever. Like he went to Harvard. Like that's the echelon of folks I thought I was supposed to be like, hobnobbing with. And I was at Paris Junior College. So I was feeling very much a failure there. And I flunked out. I think I went 2 or 3 semesters and flunked out, just flunk out. Shortly thereafter, I was in prison by the time I was 19. And so I spent 15 months in state jail, and that was behind forgery, which was also a hobby that I'd picked up after high school. I was clearly very good at because I was in prison by the time I was 19. But I learned a lot in there. I didn't go to college. I still, I've never graduated anything but rehab, and by the grace of God, have a big, beautiful life today. Seriously, I am very grateful and lucky for that. But I didn't go to college. I didn't go to the armed forces. Like I learned a lot about being a man in places like prison and rehab. And in prison, one of the things that I learned about integrity is like I was very scared. I'm a young kid going into this very scary thing, and like I still remember the lesson from back then and trying to apply it today. Like talk to everyone the same way. Like the dude that can whoop your ass, talk to him the same way that you're going to talk to the dude that you can whoop his ass. And that's honestly, I just think I picked that up by osmosis in there because there were some folks that didn't sort of behave that way, and that felt very small, and that felt very like not the way I want to be. But I watched how folks were, and like that's what integrity, like that's how I can articulate what integrity looked like to me then. And there's a similar thing that happens here in recovery in AA, is I see people live, and I try and just mimic what they're doing. Like sometimes people come in here and share, and it's like it knocks your socks off, right? But like most of the time, I mean, we're all regurgitating the same one-liners and stuff. I mean, it's not like anybody's going to blow us away with some amazing sharing here, but I get to, because I've made friends with you all, I get to see how you guys live your lives, and it's provided me with a pretty good example of how to be, and sometimes what not to be, but like whatever, we're not perfect, and like I'm really grateful for, because you are the company you keep, and like this is a room full of folks that I get to see overcome big challenges and stay close to their values, which is how I want to be. It's not always how I am, but that's how I want to be. So prison. Got out in 2006, and then from then to 2012 was really just like on wash, rinse, repeat, me going to different rehab. I cruised the rehab circuit is how I like to describe that area, that time in my life. And I didn't it was mostly like the state funded ones, which means now, like, I have a lot of experience there. Like, I really sort of love when someone is in one of those destitute places in AA, because I'm like, oh, I'm good at this triage shit. Like, come on, what do you need? Like, you need food stamps? I got you. You need bus pass? I got you. Like, I've been there. Seriously, been there a lot. But I did it over and over and over again, wash, rinse, repeat. Go to, I think I went 4 times to the free one that was in Marshall, Texas. And, my dad would drop me off and I'd be like, what's up, kitchen duty? Like, let's do this, which is really sad, but it is what it is. And if that's your, like, I'm going to try and use I statements for the most of the time, but like, if that's, I know most of you guys, but like, if that's your experience or anyone that hears this, I think it's being recorded, like, just keep going back, like, over and over and over again. If I didn't, I probably would be dead. Like, most of the time when I ended up in rehab, it was because there was a suicide attempt that just happened right before that, or there were some really dark thoughts of that, or there was some really violent thing that happened. Like, keep going back, dude. Like, grovel and go back. It worked for me. Hell. And so yeah, I got I think it was my 13th trip to rehab in 2012, and it was right after, bad choices. I hung around with rough folks, and in 2011, I got beat up pretty bad at a party. The dudes that did it got charged with hate crime charges because they were calling me every, gay slur in the book. But like, honestly, it was a bunch of drunk folks being drunk folks, and I was there being a drunk dude. Like, I'm not like victim blaming or whatever. I know that's, anyway, I'm just saying for me, I put myself in harm's way and got harmed really badly. And it was very, it was traumatic. And I tried to downplay that for a long time, but it was pretty traumatic. And I, the next year, did not want to be drunk. Felt so ashamed. Like, I don't even really, and I say this kind of stuff, which is so stupid, but like, I mean it when I say it, and then I hear myself and I laugh. Like, I think the truth is I really just like to smoke pot and take painkillers. So I will tell you, I didn't even like to drink. Like, I didn't even like to do meth, but like, I spent a good decade of my life like drinking and doing meth. So like, the facts aren't really lining up there. So just take that with a grain of salt when you catch me in that mode where I'm like, I don't even like drinking. But like, in my head, I'm like, what the fuck was I doing? Like, I don't like any of these people. All that was unsafe. It was very, it was so beneath me. Well, like, water seeks its own level. Like, it was not beneath me to be it was not. But yeah, I had enough pride or whatever to not want to be drunk again on the anniversary of that event, which the 10-year event's like coming up soon, and like it hit me the other day. I was like, I don't think I have any emotions attached to that anymore, which is cool. But like that, that's what drove me to go to the 13th rehab, and that was in what's it called, Homeward Bound, which I had it got me sober. I've been to some really nice rehabs. Homeward Bound is not at the top of that list, but it did the trick. By the way, it had bed bugs, and then the halfway house that I went to right after that also had bed bugs. So I was like, what's up, Dallas? What's up? Dallas recovery. But yeah, I moved out of there and went to an Oxford house, and really for the first time ever got connected to gay recovery in Dallas, which saved my life. I got to, like I talked about earlier, I got to like see other gay dudes that, for the most, and there's some creeps, right, like everywhere, but like for the most part, there was, people were just nice to me because I'm one of, like I got to form relationships with other gay men and women, and people who are cool enough to come hang out with gay men and women. I got to form these relationships that are based on really nothing but altruism. Sounds cheesy, but it's really kind of that. It's like, hey, I want to help you and talk to you and hang out, and I've got your best interest in mind, was sort of the vibe, which is so beautiful, like, oh my God, like, that is not the vibe of the Pentecostal church that I grew up in. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that, which maybe it ought to be, but I'll get off that. But I seriously, like, it was really beautiful to me. And I had not strung together any success in my life. I think the longest that I'd kept a job was like 3 months ever before I got sober in 2012. And I remember when I did my taxes, which was probably one of the first times I'd ever done my taxes in like 2012 or maybe it was 2013 for 2012. There was over 10 jobs that I had. So there was over 10 W-2s, and it was like Chili's for 3 weeks and, whatever. And it was, I very quickly, and this is not everyone's story, but I'll say this, like, that very quickly turned around. Like I did get fired my first year in recovery, and I stayed sober for 7 years. So I'll just say that right here, and we'll pick that up in a minute. But I got fired from like the bowling alley that I got hired at, which, by the way, I started dating another member of this program, and he was like 90 days sober, and I was 60 days sober, and it was like 13th step, and it was sort of scandalous, We're divorced now, but I used to tell him, like, well, it worked for us. I'm like, oh shit. Judge away. I'm like, oh damn it. Anyway, but we'll touch on that later too. But that was my life, and I went from. That was such a good experience too, like getting fired from the bowling alley, because it was just the right amount of like humbling, but also like, now you get to practice resilience. Like, what are you gonna do? You go get another job. And so like I got this other job waiting tables at a fine dining establishment, which I had never done anything like that before. And then within 6 months, got a job that turned into a career at a company that kept me around for like 8 years, and I was part of the leadership team. And like I've built a career based on, and I got that job at that place because I was around an old using friend who was smoking weed, and I was like, this is fine. Like, internal dialogue was like, this is fine. He's just smoking. We're at his badass downtown Dallas apartment. He's just smoking weed. But then he busted out lines of cocaine and was like, hey, do you want to, I know you're not smoking, but like, this doesn't stay in your system long. And I was like, hey, you know what? No, actually. And like, much love, but like, I've got to go, because I think if I hang out much longer, I'm going to say yeah. Anyway, it was like I handled myself the way that I mimicked the way I feel like you guys probably would have handled that, right? Like, I'm, monkey see, monkey do. And that guy is sober today, and he was struggling whenever in 2013, when he helped me get that job at my old employer that I built a career around. And I get choked up there, because like, y'all, I'm not kidding when I say I don't, like, it's not just like kind of cute. I'm almost ready to finish college. Like, I have attempted 117 hours and have completed like 6. Like, it is like a less than 1 whole, like my GPA is none. Like, and I, only by the grace of God and the principles that y'all taught me, have I been able to maintain a career like that. So like, I'm really, really grateful. Other than my kids and my recovery, it's probably the thing I'm most grateful for, because I get to feel like I'm useful and have a purpose. And I have to pinch myself all the time. I'm like, you guys are listening to me? Like, y'all value what I've got to say? It's so it's pretty amazing. Like I said, I got a boyfriend, and he meant a lot to me. And I did my step work in here, which went really fast the first time. And I'll tell you, the most significant part of that step work that first time was I guess you call it like the second or third. It's probably the third step, I guess. And I was coming out of Payway with my sponsor, and I looked up at the sky, and he had been telling me to practice this prayer of pray every night that God remove the desire and obsession and compulsion to drink and use. So I did that. And I looked up at the stars one night like a good pothead, and that's usually how I like connected to the universe, was like, sort of chilling in the sky or whatever, and like looked up, and it was really beautiful, and I was like thinking about all that, and I was like, wait, like I haven't wanted to get high, and I haven't looked at the stars like like a like an empty-headed pothead in a long time, and that's crazy. And what hit me was God answered my prayer. And as a young man, I was 27 at the time, who had for years and years and years said a fervent prayer that was very similar to the one that you can imagine a church, like, giving you all my background, would coach me into saying, like, hey, God, when I wake up, please let me be like all the other boys. Make me different. Make me want a girlfriend, whatever. I prayed that for a long time. I also had like my teen angst years where I was like very adamantly atheist and all of that. But like there was, a lot of sort of, that God of my youth kind of being woven back in, and me sort of questioning, like, am I some cosmic joke? Like, why'd you build me this way? Like, all of that. Most of that, 95+% of that, fell away in that moment where I was like, I've been praying the wrong thing. Like, I've been praying for the wrong thing. Like, there may be something sort of broken about me, but on my list of defects of character, being a gay dude is not one of them. Like, we're going to cross that off the list and work on some of this other stuff that really was eating my lunch. And I did. I began to work on it. And, there were some really glaring things, like don't steal, right? Like, don't steal. That one's easy. Don't cheat. Don't whatever. Like, those things I very quickly changed my life around. And show up for work. I love the one-liner sayings in AA. They're just so practical. Like, go to work, stay at work, work at work. Like, that was pretty profound for me. And at the age of 27, that was where the rubber met the road. I could apply that, and that was like profound for me. Easy does all the stuff that you see on like walls of old school meetings. Like, I started applying that stuff, and I also got to take a look at. My parents, God love them. They grew up. I gave you guys a little bit of background around how they grew up, and like, I am one of those people. And when I see them now, like, I have a real heart for them, mostly because I can still be them this year at 30, a 36-year-old grown man who's worked the steps umpteen times. I can still, on a bad day, tell you about how everything is my mom's fault. I can blame a lot of my life outcomes on my mother, and that's really silly and also very victim-y. And one of my favorite people in here says he's allergic to victims. And when I hear stuff like that, I almost feel attacked, because I'm like, well, I mean, some of us have, we're coming from a real place. But like, I really got to not be the victim anymore. And I applied that in my life. Now that, I'll tell y'all, that's what jacked me up over that. I got drunk and high behind being the victim again. And I am very clear today that I can't do that. And I'm also very clear that like life's going to happen again, and people are going to behave in ways that I'm not proud of. But like, I don't get to drink or use behind that. That's just for today. I'm also very clear that it's a just for today program. So let me just say, just for today, that I cannot bullshit myself enough to believe that would be okay. But that happened in 2020. That did happen. I'll tell y'all, most of I'm a dad. I through the grace of God in AA, I married that that other newcomer who we were 13th stepping together. We got married, and it was beautiful. And he and I also decided to grow a family, and so we had a process to go through, a legal process, and I got denied whenever we applied to adopt. I got denied initially, but then the attorney that we were working with was like, hey, just like, there's an appeals process. So like, they're denying you because of your rap sheet, because it's pretty significant. I've been arrested more times than I can count on fingers or toes. Like, I've been arrested a lot. And so I wrote it, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to write like I'm just going to write an explanation. And then also people from AA, wrote in like character letters, which was really amazing. Well, like, as part of one of the explanations, I wrote that it was like an assault on a police officer charge. So I write why I, as a 17-year-old, had shoplifted, and I was under the influence, and as I'm wearing like the 6 pair of wind pants, the cop, it was physical, but I didn't mean to assault. It was like this whole thing. And then they wrote back, they were like, no, not that time, like the other time that you had assaulted the police officer. So it was like, okay, yeah, no, that was also, let's talk about that one, and I explained. Anyway, the point is, the odds are stacked against me to be able to do this thing. Like, who's going to listen to that nonsense and then grant them, like, yeah, give him a kid for sure, There were some of the nicest things that I've ever seen written about me, written by people in AA that got submitted to the state. there were people with, I so look up to people that have finished their education. I'm like, how'd you do that? There's people with MDs behind their names and PhDs and people that are on the news and people that are teachers and like all these people that I look up to these people, and these are the people that I've been trying to pretend to be for, holding my breath and trying to act like for years. And I saw what they wrote about me to the state of Texas, and they were talking about how I'm somebody that they want to be like, and I'm somebody that they respect. And they were playing it up for the state, but like they meant that. I got to read these people that I respect and admire and hold in such high esteem talk about seeing and experiencing the man that I've become in the same way, which is so huge, So they grant me access, and then within I think within 1 year, I've got 2 kids. So I fly out immediately. My husband and I get selected through the adoption agency by this birth mother who was 5 months pregnant and she's like 16. That's my oldest son, Caleb. I learned everything about parenting in a plane ride of reading a book. I read, my sponsor at the time suggested that I read Sermon on the Mount, and there's a dissection of the Lord's Prayer, and it starts with Our Father. And it was just really beautiful to me. And I still try and emulate the words on that. And I believe, and this is me, again, reconcile it with, with yourself if you need to, but my view of a higher power is a heavenly Father. And it's like a heavenly Father for all of us. It's our Father. And this sort of all equal opportunity, loving being. And, I developed that view of a higher power and really sharpened it as I became a dad. And, I've had to lean on that, and I have forgotten that, and I've had to remember that. Like I said, I'll skip to the part. I also have a daughter. It was beautiful. Grew my career, husband, dream home, fucking killing it on Facebook, you guys. It was so good. It was. I was living the life I always wanted, and life happened. God dang it, did life happen in 2019? The summer of 2019. Which, our surrogate is pregnant with baby number 2. My baby, not my actual baby, but this work project baby that I had been, elevated up to this, really great position to run this product is getting sunset. I feel like a failure, which is not a good look on me with my ego. Anyway, long story short, life happens, and there's trouble in paradise. This big, beautiful life that I've got has a very, a keystone to it. And it wasn't exactly at the time AA, which that's sort of this cute thing that I talked about a lot. And I believed in it. But my marriage was absolutely at the core of my identity and of so many things that I had going on. And when Trouble in Paradise started, I was sober as a judge, not sleeping for 3 nights in a row. Depression doesn't begin to describe the white hot rage that I just walked around with. And again, Facebook gold, right? I can't show all of you that. I can't show even my best friends that because I give too much of a shit about how I look in front of these people. So I've got these select few, mostly middle-aged white Christian women that I work with, and they were very supportive that I'm telling everything to. But I very much was in need of the inclination to lean into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I did the best I could, or I thought I did, but I was showing up. I had 5 sponsees. I was going to meetings. And so this is the summer of 2019. And my ex-husband, who, P.S., one of my amends to him, because most of that rage, it's not, not pretty thin veil around who that was directed at, right? It was all at him. He is the salt of the earth, good as they come, beautiful, loving human being, a wonderful father. And I cannot say that enough because I owe it to him to sing it from the rooftops the way I've slung mud on his name over a select course of time in my life. But he's a good dude. A lesson that I have learned in Alcoholics Anonymous is, people aren't perfect, and even good people often are going to let us down. And P.S., it talks about that in the big book, maybe. There's chapters on that, the sick man's prayer, whatever. I was unable to employ those spiritual principles at, for one thing, I just needed to fucking sleep, I'm just a crazy person. Later that year, my brother dies from this disease. And I'll tell you one of the gifts, this was right before I relapsed. One of the gifts of this program is it gave me that church that instilled all this like self-hate and stuff in my mind. I went up to that church and led the service of my brother's funeral and looked all those homophobic rednecks in the eye and said, now we're going to turn to Ephesians. You know, like I'm like leading that shit. It was very, you know, like feather in my cap. I felt very good about that. Helped pay for that. Like I showed up like a man of integrity with my family. And I'm pretty good, even through all of this, when I am quite literally losing my mind, I am showing up, but I am crumbling on the inside. And, you know, I had also done this thing which, you know, therapy and outside issues are very much, it talks about in the book how those should be dealt with. So I'm going to talk about my experience with them. I think, you know, I work in healthcare. I believe in behavioral health and all of that. I spent my 16th birthday doctor shopping in Hugo, Oklahoma, convincing a woman to give me Xanax and hydrocodone. So like when I get in front of a doctor and I'm talking about how I'm experiencing life, it is a game on type situation. It is not me being honest. And so, yeah, so I went at the encouragement of folks with good intentions. I went and was like, hey, I need to talk to a therapist. And like that afternoon, I'm filling scripts for Valium and Adderall. And I mean, I know some people in this room that can do that kind of stuff and not be crazy about it. I am not that person. And I, honestly, because I've got, you know, I developed some willpower within a month. I had not been behaving. Well, I say that. Well, who knows when the relapse started? Because I had taken a couple of extra Valiums because I was like, oh, relax, okay, like it's a Valium, you know, like. So I'd gotten to this point where obviously I'm not in the best headspace, and then, you know, some altercation happens with my ex-husband. I'm in a bubble bath looking at, you know, stuff on his iPad, and I'm like, rah, you know, I'm a white hot rage. And I'm like, you know what? I should put one of those Adderall in my nose, and that would really help this situation right here. And I did that, and it was about a year before I caught another sober breath. So that was really tough. I am so glad that, also, and then this, you guys know about coronavirus, right? Like, that happened at the same time. I'm like, oh my God. And I, you know, you see people with these really wild political opinions, which all of that's outside. I'm not even going to say any, but I will tell you, you think any of that stuff is a divisive issue? If you were to talk about me about moving indoor meetings to Zoom, that period of time, I cussed out so many people that I care about very deeply in these rooms because I was, you know, I just had a very strong opinion that we should have left the rooms open. I mean, I was pretty dramatic about expressing how I felt about that. And what's funny is God loves to, almost said humiliate, humble me. God likes to humble me. My home group, other than this group, which I'm so grateful that it's been founded, that it exists. I love this group and the energy here. But one of my other home group is a group of very catty queens from Palm Springs that I hang out with every night. And they are very much not like, we are very different, and we see AA very different. And we've even cussed each other out a few times. Like they've become family to me. And like, this has been a painful last couple of years for many of us for many reasons. Throw relapse and divorce and other elements on there. It's not been awesome all the way around, but like one of the big joys and gifts has been connecting with those folks over Zoom. And like, I just see those folks like family. So I'm going to end with this. I'm sober today because I got really real on remembering the stuff that you guys taught me in 2012. I don't get to be a victim anymore, and nobody else gets the keys to my happiness or to my actions. When I am using because I'm hurt, I'm not using because you hurt me. I'm using because I chose to use. When I hurt myself because I'm like, oh, you want to hurt me? Hold my beer, motherfucker. Like, I will hurt me. Also, like, let's look at the data. We're not showing good trends with that type of, you know, behavior and attitude. Like, I've cut that stuff. So it's like I have gone back through the steps with a sponsor who I respect and who gets me. And, you know, I am finding a new spiritual experience that is similar to the one that I had, but it's really deeper. I'm, you know, one of the most beautiful, I will jack it all up if I'm trying to even paraphrase it, but like there's stuff written at the end of the 12 and 12 that talks about, you know, the joy of just being useful. And like, I find a lot of joy in that. And like, I'm a father of 3 young kids, young little bitty kids. And, you know, my oldest has some special stuff that he needs extra help with. And my daughter's got a big sassy personality, and God dang, I have no trouble finding where I need to be useful. It's in my own home. And like, I've also come to learn this like red flag about myself is like I am so married to the idea of being a good guy because I care so much about what you guys think of me. I want so badly for all you guys to just see me as fucking Captain America and just go, oh, how does he do it? He makes it look effortless. It's just idiotic. Like, that's I will have obsessive thinking about that. And like I've tried my hardest and I still have it, whatever. But like I try and give that up because like, and I say this with love. I love one of my favorite speakers says this. It's such a great line. She says, if I am worried about my opinion, the opinion of everyone in Alcoholics Anonymous, you take a look around the room at exactly who I'm trying to impress. We're all in it. We're all equal. This is the great equalizer because this disease is not a respecter of any of that other junk that we like to put on a pedestal. So I'm grateful again to be alive, to be free, to be sober, to have the opportunity to share with you guys, to be hopefully useful. I really hope I was tonight. Thank you guys so much.